Have you ever noticed how the quietest people in the room are often the ones you remember the most? Not because they demanded attention or fought for it, but because their silence carried a weight you couldn't name. It's strange how a person who barely speaks can feel louder than the ones who never stop talking, as if their calmness creates an echo in you, a reminder of something familiar, something you once felt but never understood. You notice it early in life. A child sitting at the edge of a playground, watching the world as if it's a story unfolding rather than a place they must enter. Not lonely, not sad, just observing. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's awareness. They notice the way people move, the tone of a mother's voice when she's tired, the flicker of doubt on another child's face before they lie. While others race toward noise, they drift toward stillness, as if something deep inside them whispers that the world makes more sense when it's quiet. But quiet people grow up in a world that fears silence. By the time you're an adult, you've already been labeled 100 different things: shy, aloof, mysterious, hard to read, maybe even cold. People misinterpret silence because they project their own discomfort onto it. They don't see the inner world behind your eyes, the way your thoughts bloom like constellations, the way you replay conversations long after they've ended, the way your mind stretches far beyond what your words ever reveal. Quietness, for you, becomes both a refuge and a burden, a place where you protect yourself from the noise of the world, and a place where the world forgets to look for you. You enter a crowded gathering and feel your chest tighten, not from fear, but from the expectation to perform. Your mind scans every detail, every expression, every shift in energy, until you slowly retreat into yourself, slipping into an internal room where you can breathe again. Psychologists call this heightened sensitivity. Neuroscientists call it increased internal processing. Attachment theorists recognize it as a form of self-protection learned early, sometimes from parents who spoke too loudly or not at all. Whatever the origin, the result is the same. You feel deeply, but speak softly. You understand more than you admit. You carry stories you've never told. There's beauty in it, and loneliness too. Because when the world misunderstands silence, it misunderstands you, and the quietest people often become experts at hiding the noise inside them. To understand a quiet person, you must first understand the story that built their silence. Have you ever wondered why some children speak loudly and freely, while others sit quietly at the edge of the room, their eyes absorbing everything like a camera that never blinks? You don't choose silence at that age, it chooses you. It grows in the spaces where your voice wasn't heard, or worse, where it was punished for existing. You remember moments like these, even if you don't consciously revisit them. A child tugging gently at a parent's sleeve, trying to say something, only for the adult to wave them off because they're busy. A small voice being quickly corrected, interrupted, or dismissed. A living room filled with tension so thick that even footsteps sound like intrusions. In those moments, you learn a simple rule. Speaking creates danger, but silence creates safety. You retreat into observation because observing feels safer than participating. Maybe you grew up in a home where emotions were unpredictable, where the volume of the adults determined the weather of the entire house. You learned to monitor every shift, the tightening jaw, the sudden silence before an argument, the forced smile that meant the storm wasn't over. Neuroscientists call this hypervigilance. You call it survival. Your nervous system rewired itself long before you knew what the word nervous system even meant. Attachment theorists describe children like you as avoidant or anxious, withdrawn, not because you didn't want love, but because you learned to protect yourself from the way love was delivered, sometimes too loud, sometimes too distant, sometimes too unstable. So you built an inner room where things were predictable, where you could breathe without feeling the weight of someone else's emotions pressing against your chest. You can still picture it, a small child hiding behind their parent's leg when unfamiliar faces appear. Not out of fear, but out of a deep sensitivity. The world simply feels too sharp, too bright, too full of edges. Or the moment you finally gathered the courage to speak in a room full of people, only to be misunderstood, laughed at, or told to speak up. After that, silence felt kinder than exposure. Quietness becomes a shield long before it becomes a personality. You don't realize it then, but you're building walls out of observation, crafting armor, out of stillness, learning the world through patterns instead of conversations. And over time, you become the child who sees everything but says nothing, the one who feels deeply but expresses quietly, the one who survives by blending into the background. But silence learned for survival doesn't remain in childhood, it grows into something far more complex. Have you ever noticed how silence that once protected you as a child doesn't simply disappear when you grow older? It transforms. It becomes a kind of mask, one you wear so naturally that even you forget it's there. People look at you and see calmness, wisdom, composure. They see a person who speaks only when something meaningful needs to be said. They admire your stillness without ever realizing that stillness was once survival. You walk into adulthood carrying the habits you never consciously chose. You become the observer, the one who watches the room before entering it. In a workplace meeting, you listen to everyone argue over ideas, your mind quietly stitching together the full picture while others rush to fill the silence. You speak only when you're absolutely certain, because you were trained long ago that uncertainty invites judgment. Your words come slowly, carefully, as if each one must be inspected before it leaves your mouth. And while people may tell you they appreciate your calm energy, they rarely see the shadow behind it, the quiet disconnection you've learned to live with. In friendships, you're the one who remembers every detail but rarely shares your own. In relationships, you feel everything intensely but reveal it cautiously, terrified of overwhelming someone or being misunderstood again. You overthink before speaking because your nervous system still remembers what it felt like to be dismissed, corrected, or ignored. Silence becomes both your armor and your prison. It shields you from the chaos of emotional conflict. You avoid arguments not because you don't care, but because your body senses danger in raised voices, sharp tones, or unpredictable emotions. You breathe underwater in conversations, holding yourself back, rationing your truth, telling yourself that staying quiet keeps the peace. Over time, your quietness becomes a closed window. People see your silhouette, but they never feel the warmth of your presence fully. And yet, something deeper happens outside your awareness. The same silence that others interpret as strength often makes you feel unseen, unchosen, unheard. People assume you don't need attention because you don't demand it. They assume you're fine with being left out because you never complain. They see your stillness and mistake it for self-sufficiency, while inside you ache for someone who notices the effort it takes to hold your world together. You live in the tension of two truths. The world thinks your quietness is wisdom, but you know it is also fear. They see calm water. You feel the storm beneath, and though silence feels emotional, what you carry is rooted deeper than feelings alone. Yet silence is not only emotional, it is biological. Have you ever wondered why silence feels like home to you? Not just emotionally, but physically, almost biologically. Why noise seems to pierce through your body instead of just your ears. Why a simple conversation with too many layers, too many expressions, too many energies can leave you feeling strangely drained, as if someone unplugged something inside you. It isn't weakness, it isn't shyness, It's your brain wired differently, responding differently, surviving differently. From a young age, your nervous system has been tuned like an instrument that picks up subtleties others miss. Neuroscientists call this high sensitivity. It means your brain processes information deeply every tone, every gesture, every shift in emotional weather. While others move through social moments lightly, you absorb them like impact. A crowded room can feel like standing in front of a speaker turned up too loud. You don't just hear the noise, you feel it in your chest, your breath, your mind. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, fires more intensely for people wired like you. Research shows that introverted or sensitive individuals often experience stronger emotional responses, even in calm environments. That's why conflict leaves you shaky, why criticism lingers longer, and why you sometimes replay conversations late at night, analysing what you said and what you should have said. It isn't overthinking because you choose to, it's overprocessing because your brain won't stop. There's also the quiet truth of dopamine. Extroverts thrive on dopamine spikes, social stimulation fuels them. But your brain's dopamine pathways work differently. Too much external input overwhelms you. This is why you think deeply before you speak, why you prefer one meaningful conversation over 10 shallow ones, why being around too many people for too long feels like running out of oxygen underwater. You need solitude not to escape the world, but to regulate yourself enough to exist within it. Then comes the psychological weight, the spotlight effect. You often feel watched even when no one is looking, judged even when no one is thinking about you. Growing up unseen can ironically make you feel hyperseen as an adult. So you self-monitor every word, every expression, every small reaction. You become your own internal supervisor. Silence feels easier than misinterpretation. Stillness feels safer than being misunderstood. And slowly you learn that your biology and psychology dance together. A sensitive brain creates a quiet personality. A quiet personality reinforces sensitive wiring. It becomes a loop, one that shapes your entire experience of the world, how you think, how you connect, how you protect yourself. But every strength carries a shadow, and silence has one too. Have you ever felt like your own silence slowly started working against you, as if the very thing that once protected you became the reason you feel so alone now? It happens quietly, almost invisibly. One day you wake up and realize you've built a life inside a room, with locked doors safe from chaos, yes, but also sealed away from the warmth you secretly long for. You begin to notice it in your relationships. People think they understand you because you don't correct them. They assume you're fine because you don't complain. They choose for you because you rarely choose for yourself. Silence becomes a mirror where others reflect their own stories, their own assumptions, their own insecurities onto you. And you stand there, watching quietly, feeling like a voice trapped behind glass, visible but never truly heard. There's a particular loneliness in being misunderstood for reasons you never created. You're not distant, you're cautious. You're not indifferent, you're overwhelmed. You're not passive, you're processing. But the world reads quietness like an empty page instead of the full book it truly is. You feel it most deeply when you want connection. You sit with friends, listening to them laugh, adding small comments here and there, but never revealing the oceans that move inside you. You want to speak, to open up, to take off the mask of calmness you've worn for so long. But your body freezes, the old fear rising like a shadow inside your chest. Vulnerability feels like stepping into daylight after years of living underground, blinding, disorienting, risky. So you stay quiet. But the more you protect yourself, the more disconnected you feel. It's the cruel paradox of silence. The instinct that once kept you safe slowly becomes the reason you feel unsafe with yourself. Opportunities slip through the cracks too. In the workplace, others speak quickly and confidently while you wait for certainty. By the time you're ready, the moment has passed. You become the one with brilliant ideas no one hears. The one who gets praised for being easygoing instead of being understood as thoughtful. You become the lighthouse, guiding others with your perception, your intuition, your quiet wisdom, but standing alone on the edge of the shore, unseen by the very people you keep safe. And deep down, a quiet resentment grows. Not anger toward others, but toward the invisible barrier between who you are and what the world sees. You crave connection, yet fear exposure. You want to be chosen, yet hide the parts of you that need choosing. You ache to be understood, yet speak in whispers when the moment arrives. This is the shadow of silence, the wound inside the wisdom. And society, rather than healing this wound, often deepens it. Have you ever noticed how the world seems to applaud the loudest voices, even when their echoes fade quickly, while the quiet ones carry truths that last for years yet go unnoticed? It's a strange kind of irony. Society claims to value depth, reflection, wisdom, but in practice, it rewards noise. It celebrates those who speak first, not those who think deeply. And without realizing it, you grow up believing that silence makes you less valuable. You first encounter this imbalance in school. The child who raises their hand the fastest is praised, while the one who thinks before speaking is told to participate more. You watch teachers encourage boldness as if it's the only form of intelligence, while your quiet insight stays hidden like a treasure no one bothers to dig for. You begin to carry the word shy like a label, one that feels more like a limitation than a description. As you grow older, the pattern only intensifies. In workplaces, confidence is mistaken for competence. The person who speaks the most in meetings is seen as a leader, even when their ideas barely scratch the surface. Meanwhile, your thoughtful observations only find recognition when someone louder repeats them. Silence becomes misinterpreted as lack of ambition, lack of initiative, lack of presence. Yet often, you're the one who sees the full picture while others get lost in fragments. At home, families repeat the same script. Bold children are called stars, while quiet ones are told they're sensitive, a word meant kindly but delivered like a diagnosis. You learn that being loud earns pride, while being quiet earns concern. And so, slowly, cultural conditioning teaches you to shrink yourself, not because you want to, but because you feel like you don't belong in a world that equates volume with value. Philosophers understood this contradiction long before modern society amplified it. Nietzsche wrote about the inward power, the kind that grows in silence, not in noise. Jung believed the quiet person lives in deeper conversation with their shadow, the internal world where truth is forged. In a culture obsessed with visibility, the quiet person becomes a countercultural figure, someone who refuses to mistake expression for essence. Yet society isn't cruel on purpose, it's simply built on misunderstanding. People forget that silence can be strength, that depth often speaks in whispers, that the softest voices sometimes carry the heaviest truths. But the world's obsession with volume creates a burden for you, one you rarely name out loud, the burden of feeling unseen despite seeing everything, the burden of being needed for your sensitivity yet overlooked for it at the same time. The result is an emotional burden few see, but quiet people carry every day. Have you ever noticed how the quietest moments in your life are often the heaviest? Not because anything dramatic is happening, but because that's when you finally feel the weight of everything you never said. Silence isn't empty for you, it's crowded. It holds every feeling you swallowed, every thought you rehearsed but never voiced, every moment you wished someone would look at you just a little deeper. You feel it late at night, lying awake, replaying a conversation that lasted only minutes but echoes for hours. You dissect every word, every pause, every expression, wondering if you said too little, wondering if you should have spoken when your heart begged you to. You stare at the ceiling and feel a loneliness that doesn't come from being alone, but from being unknown. It's a loneliness that grows quietly, like roots under the soil, invisible but alive. And after social moments, you often sit in your car before driving home, not because you're tired of people, but because you're tired of holding yourself together around them. Your body needs silence, the way a dehydrated garden needs water. You breathe slowly, trying to release the tension you carried all evening, the forced smiles, the careful words, the pressure to appear fine even when your internal world was trembling. Emotional exhaustion becomes a familiar visitor, one you learn to live with because you don't know where else to put it. There are moments when you almost speak when something inside you rises, like a wave, asking to be heard. But your throat tightens, your chest stiffens, and the old fear returns. The fear of being misunderstood, of being too much or too complicated. So the words sink back down, joining the countless others you've buried. Over time, this self-silencing becomes second nature. You don't just hide your emotions, you numb them. What begins as protection slowly becomes disconnection. Psychologists call this emotional suppression. Neuroscientists call it cognitive overload. You simply feel it as a heaviness, a quiet ache that follows you into every relationship. You struggle to form deep connections, not because you don't care, but because you care too much. You watch friendships from a distance. You love quietly, intensely, invisibly. And when people fail to notice your efforts, it reinforces the old belief that your voice isn't needed, that your presence is optional. But the truth is simpler and sadder. You've been carrying an inner world alone for so long that you've forgotten it was ever meant to be shared. You've mistaken solitude for destiny, silence for identity, emotional exhaustion for normality. Yet silence is not a life sentence, it is a language that can be rewritten. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to speak without fear? Not loudly, not forcefully, just honestly. To let your words come out without rehearsing them 100 times in your mind. To exist without shrinking. To take up space without apologizing for it. The truth is, reclaiming your voice doesn't mean becoming someone you're not. It means returning to the person you were before the world taught you to be silent. You begin slowly, almost imperceptibly, the way dawn enters a dark room. A small boundary here, a gentle truth there. You learn that saying no doesn't make you selfish, it makes you real. You start recognizing the moments when your body tenses before your mind even forms words, and you pause long enough to ask yourself what you actually want. This is where healing quietly begins, in the private conversations you have with yourself before you dare to share them with the world. You might practice emotional expression in fragments, a sentence at a time, a truth spoken softly. A feeling named before it overwhelms you. Psychologists call this affect. Labeling the simple act of identifying your emotions reduces their intensity. Neuroscience shows that what is named loses its power to consume you. You discover that feelings, once acknowledged, become less like monsters in the dark and more like visitors passing through. Self-validation becomes another turning point. Instead of waiting for others to notice your effort, your pain, your depth, you notice it yourself. You begin to rewrite the narratives from childhood, the ones that said your voice was too small, too inconvenient, too unnecessary. You understand now that you weren't quiet because you lacked something. You were quiet because you felt too much, too deeply, too honestly for a world that rushes past its own emotions. As you heal, you start choosing relationships that feel like open windows instead of locked rooms. People who don't demand performances. People who listen with presence, not impatience. People who make you feel seen, not studied. Safe relationships allow you to unfold, not just function. They make speaking feel like breathing instead of breaking. But perhaps the most profound step is embracing your quietness as a strength. You realize you never needed to be loud to be powerful. Your depth, your observation, your emotional intelligence, these were gifts, not flaws. Your silence was never emptiness. It was a language the world simply didn't know how to read. And now, slowly, you're learning to translate yourself, not to please others, but to free the parts of you that have lived too long in the shadows. And so the story of the quiet person ends where all true stories begin with awareness. Have you ever noticed how the quietest moments reveal the most? Not the noise, not the arguments, not the rush of everyday life, but the stillness in between. The world may not praise silence, but it's where truth hides. It's where the deepest parts of you speak in a language no one else hears, yet somehow guides every decision you make. You've spent your entire life living in that quiet universe inside you, thinking it made you small. But maybe it made you something else entirely, someone ancient, someone intuitive, someone who carries truths older than their own lifetime. Quietness isn't emptiness, it's depth. It's the ocean floor where sunlight barely reaches, yet life thrives in ways no one sees. You've felt this in your own body, the way silence allows your thoughts to settle, the way your emotions rise and fall like tides, the way clarity arrives not with noise, but with breathing room. Some people need chaos to feel alive, but you've always found life in the spaces between. Your inner world is a universe, vast and sprawling, filled with memories, reflections, questions, and small revelations that shape you more than any loud moment ever could. You've learned that silence is clarity. It's where you finally hear the things you've ignored, the small ache in your chest, the longing you've hidden, the truth you've softened to keep others comfortable. In silence, nothing can pretend. Masks fall away, shadows show their shape, and the monster within becomes less terrifying because you finally see its face. Your quietness has never been a weakness. It has been the doorway to the parts of yourself most people spend their lives avoiding. And perhaps that's why quiet people feel older than they are. You carry the weight of observation, the wisdom of patience, the strange intuition that comes from watching the world more than participating in it. You've seen the patterns others miss. You've learned the lessons they overlook. You've survived storms without screaming for help. There is something ancient about that, something that cannot be taught, only lived. Maybe that is the hidden gift of your silence. You echo in ways that noise never could. You leave soft imprints on people, gentle, subtle, unforgettable. You aren't the thunder, you're the ground it shakes. You're the whisper that lingers long after the shouting ends. You're the calm that reveals what truly matters. And so, as the world continues to reward loudness, remember this: the oldest truths were never shouted. They were carried quietly, passed from heart to heart, soul to soul, moment to moment. Some people speak loudly, but some people, like you, echo forever.